Good morning. Today is Wednesday, October 9, 2024, and it's time for another post-cabinet press briefing. And today we have a lot of very important people in the room, and we're going to be discussing some very important things today. And I have to acknowledge Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, and I think she is the best Minister of Foreign Affairs we have ever had in our country, and so it's an honor to have her here this morning as our guest. I also want to acknowledge Ambassador Rocky Mead, the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister and my Permanent Secretary, and also Ambassador Sheila Seeley Monteith, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and she's an ambassador extraordinaire that so many of us have learned from. To acknowledge the Commissioner of Police, Dr. Kevin Blake, and of course, every time I come to post-cabinet press briefing, I talk about the reduction in crime numbers, and I see the Commissioner here, and I always have to say it because it's not said enough. When the numbers were going up, we were always talking about the numbers going up. When they're going down, we also need to celebrate the numbers going down. Also have to acknowledge Lieutenant Colonel Godfrey Sterling, the head of the Jamaica Cyber Incident Response Unit, and he is going to be speaking to us about cybersecurity today. It's a very important area. We also have Colonel Desmond Edwards, the Director General of MOCA. I know there's George Ramakan, the head of cyber at the Bank of Jamaica, also here. There are lots of other persons here. I couldn't acknowledge everyone in the room. I'd love to, but I can't. The teams from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also the teams from OPM. I know I see the CTD at OPM, Joaquin Murray, and others from the cyber kind of the general stakeholders in cyber. There are many of you here, and I want to welcome you here. And I also want to, as always, welcome members of the media and those Jamaicans who are watching at home and abroad. Now, I always start with a few good items that may have missed the news a little bit. And so I will do so. As always, I will not do all of them. Again, I have to cut it short because we have a lot to discuss this morning. The first one I'll point out is the Hanover Justice Center. And the government of Jamaica has taken a significant step toward improving access to justice with the construction of the Hanover Justice Center, and that's costing us $172 million. And this new Justice Center will serve as a model for the development of a network of similar facilities across the island. The Minister of Justice, the Honorable Delroy Chuck, has been spearheading this initiative. And the contract for this state-of-the-art Justice Center, and he said it to me, he wants it to be state-of-the-art with lots of technology embedded in it. The signing actually happened for the contract on Friday, last week Friday that happened. And so the Hanover Justice Center will be constructed in Sandy Bay, Hanover. And the building will be equipped with office spaces dedicated to the Ministry of Justice's Social Justice Services team, as well as the Child Diversion and Restorative Justice teams. It will also house offices for the custos and also deal with mediation services. The facility will be designed to ensure accessibility for persons with disabilities, and that's also something that's very important in terms of government buildings. As we are doing new ones or renovating, we're ensuring that every Jamaican has access to our buildings, and so that no Jamaican will be left behind in these processes. So the Hanover Justice Center is the first of its kind, and it's going to be really phenomenal when it opens, and work will be starting very soon on building that. The other one I want to point out is in relation to beekeepers, and I talk a lot about agriculture and the work that's being done by the Honorable Floyd Green in this area. And the Ministry of Agriculture has allocated significant support to assist beekeepers who were impacted by Hurricane Beryl. When we think about Hurricane Beryl, we tend to think about those who farm the tomatoes and other vegetables and so on, but we don't think of beekeepers. Beekeepers were actually very much affected by Hurricane Beryl, and so this support is very important. And since the start of 2024, the apiculture unit has inspected over 14,000 bee colonies and successfully successfully established more than 160 new apiaries. So there's a lot of work happening to expand our beekeepers, and a lot of these are really small farmers. And so for many of us, when we're looking at it, the numbers don't look big, but they impact a lot of people. And so it's very important work that the ministry is doing, and they are also, in addition to that, ensuring that more than 360 supermarkets and health food stores across the island comply with the rigorous standards set for honey production in Jamaica. And so there's a focus on standards there. The other one, again, in relation to our emphasis on persons with disability always having access. The Ministry of Education and Youth, they have installed ramps in nearly 400 schools across Jamaica to improve access to education for students with physical challenges, and this is particularly for those who use wheelchairs. And we know how that has been a problem in our schools with our children who need to have access, and you have to be lifting them up on a wheelchair. Well, this is why the Minister of Education and Youth, the Honorable Favour Williams, has really emphasized this, and it's an emphasis that the whole government has in ensuring access. And so we're very happy that 400 schools have wheelchair ramps now. The other one I want to point out before we get going is the St. James initiatives around Hurricane Beryl. We always think about the South Coast when we think of Hurricane Beryl, but other parishes were affected. And residents of St. James affected by Hurricane Beryl have received much needed assistance for minor home repairs through the St. James Municipal Corporation's Housing Relief Grant. And so they have distributed grants to 119 residents in the parish. And so 119 Jamaicans who were wondering how they were going to be able to do the repairs to their homes have gotten support. And so this effort highlights the St. James Municipal Corporation's dedication to working closely with local authorities and residents to address the issues in relation to recovery after Hurricane Beryl. And one that I will point out to, which was in the news, is in relation to the Honorable Desmond Mackenzie opening the refurbished bathroom facilities at the Ocho Rios Market in St. Anne, and that's important. Having proper facilities for our vendors in the markets is very important. And this is not the only one that will be done. There are several that will be done, and it is important that we do it. And these renovations to the Ocho Rios Market cost $10 million, and there is budgeted $250 million to use across markets across Jamaica. The last thing I'll point out is in relation to DBJ funding. Every business needs access to capital. And this is very important to the government too. We believe in enabling the people of Jamaica to generate their wealth and live a wonderful life. And so 8 medium-sized companies have been awarded grants totaling $160 million, and that's a grant. I didn't say a loan, those are grants to medium-sized enterprises. The financial assistance comes from the DBJ's Boosting Innovation, Growth, and Entrepreneurship Ecosystem. It's called BIGGE, and that's an innovation grant fund that they have. And it is done in partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB. So each of these companies received $20 million in funding to aid the development and commercialization of innovative products, services, processes, and business models. And I'm going to tell you who the 8 beneficiaries are, because a lot of times you don't know. Businesses around Jamaica get funds from the government, they get support from the government, and nobody knows. And we just see them expanding and doing really well. And I want to congratulate these 8 beneficiaries, because they would have gone through a process of establishing that their businesses were sound. We would have gone through this process to establish that there was really commercial viability for these businesses and their products. And so the 8 beneficiaries are SC-ROM Limited, Saddle Energy Limited, HDB Manufacturers and Distributors, Medical X-Ray Institute Limited, Sunshine Dialysis Center Limited, Clubhouse Brewery, Adtelligent Limited, and Book Fusion Limited. And so it's a range of businesses. So it's not just, in a particular sector. So you have those in the healthcare industry, you also have in advertising, and you also have generally in manufacturing. So a lot of businesses here. So those 8 businesses each get $20 million. I have a long list of other things that happened last week, but I'm going to stop there. It's 9/11, and I am going to turn it over to our visiting minister. And I had the pleasure of, for the first time, being able to be on a mission with Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith. Now, I always knew she was wonderful, but I found out she was even more wonderful than I had known, just in terms of her dedication. And it was also very good for me to see how highly regarded she is internationally. She is seen as one of the leading ministers of foreign affairs. No, we're not going to do that, right? Ministers of foreign affairs in the world. And so I'm very honored to have her as a colleague and to learn from her every single day. Her commitment is unparalleled. And she was there, and she was our shining light with the Prime Minister in India. And she is here this morning to give an update and to take questions from the media in relation to the India mission. And she will also speak a bit about Haiti. So please help me welcome the best Minister of Foreign Affairs we have ever had, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith.
Thank you for your always kind and generous introduction, Senator Morris Dixon. And Minister, of course, played an incredible job on the trip. You know, her knowledge and command of the area and digital, of all areas digital, is phenomenal, and therefore she impressed every day, every setting, every engagement, and made us all extremely proud as well. So we thank you for being a part of making the trip such a success, Senator. Members of the media, senior officials of the government of Jamaica, and in particular my Permanent Secretary Meade, and of course Commissioner, welcoming you all. Also want to say a special good morning to everyone who's joining us online. Members of the media, thank you again for always covering us and for making sure that our information gets to every nook and cranny of Jamaica, which is so important for us to continue to build social cohesion and understanding of the work that we do every day. So as Minister Morris Dixon has indicated, I will speak to both issues, the official visit to India and the an update on Haiti, although I will leave that more to questions. Prime Minister gave a thorough and very effective presentation to Parliament yesterday. I hope that you were watching. But for those who were not, I thank Minister Morris Dixon for inviting me to report in this forum. And she has done so because the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is such a critical part in supporting the preparations for and execution of implementation after these trips take place. And I want to make special mention of 2 members of my team, Mrs. Mills and Ms. Bloomfield, who were part of our delegation as well. They are part of our bilateral relations department, and they are critical, or were critical to its success, and will be critical to the work that we do going forward. I want to just specially thank you both ladies this morning for all the work that you have done. The work behind the scenes. I always say foreign ministry is always the unseen hand in a lot of work that happens in the government, and within the ministry we have the unseen hands behind the unseen hands, and I'm very pleased to have you both here with PS today. The Indian community, of course, has been integral to our development since their arrival almost 180 years ago, and since the independence of India, we also, and our independence, we've had friendly diplomatic relations for more than 60 years. But it has taken all of this time for us to get to the place of the historic visit of the first Prime Minister of Jamaica to pay an official visit to India on the invitation of Sri Narendra Modi, His Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India. I must indicate, and by way of reminder, that I am honored to have been the first Jamaican foreign minister to have paid an official visit, which I did in 2017. So this effort to build towards a strengthened partnership, and one that now has very significant outcomes to reap, has been taking place, and we note, of course, the unprecedented visit of the President of India to Jamaica in 2022 as well. So we have had a stream of activities, and truly, truly want to highlight the point at which our partnership has now reached, reflected in the outcomes of the Prime Minister's visit. It is important for us to not only highlight the work of this ministry, but to express appreciation to His Excellency Mayank Joshi, who is a new High Commissioner of India to Jamaica, and who has played a critical role in ensuring that we coordinated well with Jamaica's High Commissioner to India, Jason Hall, as well as the teams on both sides who worked really assiduously to make this visit come together. There'll also be important focal points helping the ministry team to build on new discussions opened as new areas were discussed while we were there, to finalize agreements which are under discussion because we've signed 4 memoranda, but there are others which are underway, and of course also to implement the agreements which are in place. I know, Minister, you will speak a bit more on the digital outcomes, so I will leave that to you and just remind that the 4 memoranda of understanding which we signed touch on culture, sports, digital transformation, and we are far progressed, in fact, on cooperation agreements in areas including health, education, and defense. The bilateral areas, Prime Minister had outlined them yesterday: trade and economic cooperation, defense and security cooperation, and as indicated, education, health and capacity building, and the broad heading of people-to-people relations, which includes quite a bit. In relation to trade and economic cooperation, I want to highlight that the matter of a trade agreement was placed on the table by Prime Minister Modi in bilateral engagements. But anyone who knows anything about trade, people who follow these issues, know how deeply complicated entry into trade agreements are. So that matter is now with us at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade for us to start to discuss the opportunities and the technical side of getting such an agreement in place. But we are also making sure that we take the practical or reap the practical harvests from the cooperation agreements that are in place, and that we pursue the practical opportunities that exist on the investment side and the trade side already. Because trade is happening. India is a good market for rum and spices, and that can be expanded. We're looking at that actively. And investment was an important part of our trip. The private sector engagements in particular, which focused and were led through the CII, which is their apex private sector organization that has more than 9,000 private sector interests or business interests across India. There are several organizations, but this is the organization, and we had the opportunity to engage with specific targeted investors and major investors as well, some who have interests here, some who are considering, and some who we felt were ripe for engagement to invite so that they will consider. And having all of them together and being able to answer questions, pose questions, and really sell Jamaica in a positive way, to share all the macroeconomic reforms that have taken place and the new understanding of Jamaica's situation today and the one they may have heard of 10 years ago and dismissed and gone to Costa Rica or Panama, etc., where several of them are. And we're inviting them to say, we are a 2-hour flight away. We're 1.5 hours from Miami. We're 2 hours from Panama. We're 3 from New York. We have one of the most connected, if not the most connected, English-speaking Caribbean country to South, Central, and North America. Come and see what we're doing. There are businesses here succeeding in areas which are important to you. And I will tell you that the energy was very high in the room. It's now to us to harvest those benefits. An important area of agreement that also arose from the bilateral discussions, and one which perhaps was not touched on yesterday was the agreements on reprioritizing negotiations on an air services agreement. One had been initialed more than a decade ago, and of course, air services agreements are critical to movement of people, to trade and investment, to facilitating general engagement, both on the people side and on the goods and services side. So with the anticipated trip of Minister Bartlett later in the year, and having had these initial discussions, getting it back on the table was important for us. And that has been done, so we hope to make more progress with that this very month of October. In the matter of security and defense cooperation, I just want to mention that the Prime Ministers both shared views on how important it is to ensure that technology is a part of crime fighting, and how successful and useful it is as a force multiplier. So they're very like-minded in terms of how we can share some of their technological advancements to assist in equipment and training for our security forces. So this was very positive. In education and capacity building, many of you would already have heard about the iTech program, which has trained more than 400 Jamaicans since it started in late 80-something. And this is something that we want to expand. We want to expand the areas in which training is provided, but we also want to expand beyond iTech. And there is a great deal of appetite for us to ensure that we're not only training young people for jobs of the future, but training trainers so that we build our capacity here and are always growing at more than one level. This is also relevant to the engagement in respect of the 7 STEM schools that we intend to build, because India's prowess in technological and technical training is world-renowned, and we are very much looking forward to tapping into that. So a memorandum of understanding on vocational training is already being worked on, so we are in a good place in that regard. In discussing space and satellite technology, which people think, well, why is a small island developing country discussing areas like space? But when you think about the massive advances that are being made in the harvesting of information on climate and for the purposes of agriculture, you think, okay, there are relevant points to be made here beyond broader academic understanding, which is also important. So that continues. Affordable medicine, absolutely critical, and just bears reiterating, because you will remember that India was the first country to respond to our need for vaccines. When the world had shut down their supplies and everyone was living in fear, India was the first country to say, we will share with the world. And they have a pharmaceutical industry which is more than enviable, and it is one on which they're willing to share with us their high-quality medicine for us to look at how we can reduce the cost of medicines to the average Jamaican here. So we're very excited about that. Prime Minister spoke about our sports cooperation and looking at coach exchanges and athletic exchanges. That years ago they assisted us with lighting at Sabina, and we're now working to get the scoreboards in place with their assistance. And this is something, of course, that we feel confident is moving ahead positively. Bollywood, we know, is a great opportunity with Jamaica's amazing stories and Bollywood's incredible ability to tell them. We had great opportunities to discuss the possibilities of entering into a co-production agreement, as well as the other types of arrangements that facilitate investment. Part of that is getting people here so that they can see the amazing country that we have as a film location, and of course so we can look at pairing people together between their film commission and ours, so that we can try to ensure that users of the $1 billion fund that the Jamaican government has put in place are able to find wider opportunities, global opportunities that they may not have the individual capacity to leverage. So again, just to very, very quickly say in respect of Prime Minister's visit, he met with the president, he met with the vice president, and we also met with the minister of Health and Family Welfare, and had broader discussions again about that MOU on health cooperation, which is underway, and looking at issues on how they deal with diabetes, how they deal with NCDs, how they deal with the same demand of individuals for dialysis and kidney failure, how it is we try to leverage best practices there with their large population, and how we can scale and possibly benefit from those. On the legacy components, we spoke about the High Commission. And this is really a very important development for India, not only its existence as a focal point for economic and trade discussions and for cultural exchanges, but representing the interest of the government in being present in their country. It's very important. These diplomatic elements, sometimes their weight is undervalued, but the step was important, and the Prime Minister's opening of it officially was also very important on both sides. And this brings us to Jamaica Marg. Jamaica Road. We now have a road in New Delhi named after Jamaica. I don't know how many countries are going to be able to claim that, but when it is said that the Jamaican High Commission is on Jamaica Marg, it's not the only one. There are other embassies that are on that same road. I don't know how they felt about it the next morning, but we know how we felt, and we know how the government of India felt. But actually, it's actually surprising. There has been nothing but goodwill around it. Many countries just are saluting the ability of Jamaica to punch above its weight in so many different ways and means. And the establishment of Jamaica Marg, Jamaica Way, is one of those, again, true reflections by the Indian government of their positive intention to deepen our relations, because, approval at local government level in a city that size could not have been an easy thing to achieve. I want to just mention also the laying of a wreath in the memory of Mahatma Gandhi, and the Prime Minister's planting of a tree on the grounds of the Memorial Park in homage to the natural world and our environment, of course, and as part of the Prime Minister Modi's own greening and environmental policy. So again, with Jamaica's 3 million trees, and the Indian government's similar program, we really have much in common on very different aspects. I want to also briefly mention that I was honored to have been able to meet with the Dean of the Sushma Swaraj Foreign Service Institute within the Ministry of External Affairs of India. I will just make note of the importance of the honor at a foreign minister level, at a female foreign minister level, and on a personal level, because she was in fact the minister who invited me to visit India and who really re-energized our engagement at a bilateral level. She passed suddenly in 2019, and because of her phenomenal influence on foreign policy practice in India, they named their 38-year-old institute after her. So I was able to sit and meet with the executive team on how it is we can work together to develop curricula and to build capacity within our ministry. Jamaica is very well known for the excellence of our diplomacy, but this can't be a static process. The dream of a Foreign Service Institute, I met it when I became minister, and I am very pleased and honored, together with PS Sealy Monteith and our former PS Gilbert Roberts, that we have an institute within our ministry now. We have a dean appointed. Thanks to PS's work, we now have a dean appointed, and developing the work to ensure that we can always maintain and grow is very important for us to continue to look forward as a nation. So I will say no more on that, on India at this point in time, unless there are questions, which I will be happy to take. I hope I reiterated the points of importance, or most of them. On Haiti, I just wish to note that since the establishment of the Transitional Presidential Council earlier this year, there have been significant improvements in the political situation in the country. And noting that last year, this time, much of the debate was about whether this political situation was stable enough to have security support, or whether security support was needed in order to deliver political stability. That debate has been largely resolved in that transitional presidential council exists. They have been working through many of the difficult issues that establishment of institutional frameworks to take them back to elections requires. So it is good news to note that they are almost there with establishing the Provisional Electoral Council, which is the body that is constitutionally authorized to implement all the steps and requirements needed for elections. You might recall that elections are, and the life of the council is actually scheduled for 2026. So the hope is to have things in place to allow that timeline to be met. And the Electoral Council is therefore one of the critical milestones in ensuring Haiti's return to democratic governance. We take note that they have been experiencing some challenges, and we encourage their continued engagement with the Eminent Persons Group that continues to give guidance on working through some of the difficult issues. You'd recall that these stakeholders that are represented on the council are bodies that have traditionally been competitive with each other. They have never worked together. So it means that they will continue to have challenges, and being able to have experienced statespersons from a Caribbean background to work with them and international partners has been very important to part of the process. And CARICOM and indeed Jamaica's support takes place to quite an extent through this. We do really hope that they will be able to continue to work in a way that will facilitate consensus and credibility, because the credibility of the body and its work is critical to the fundamental process. Security, however, of course, remains the greatest area of concern, together with its very interlinked humanitarian concerns. And in light of this context, in the UN High-Level Week, Jamaica advocated throughout the week in different fora for continued and additional support of the international community for the work of the Multinational Security Support Mission, the MSS mission. On the 2nd of October, the UN Security Council voted in favor of extending the mandate of the mission for 1 year. We're very pleased with that result. It is critical to ensure that we're able to advocate for more funding, and more funding will, of course, help to support other countries coming forward with personnel to build out the numbers that are needed on the ground. You would be aware, of course, that Jamaica deployed our initial command contingent on the 12th of September. And I can, of course, reiterate that we will honor our further commitment, although the matter of timing of our phased deployment and that of the CARICOM Joint Task Force has been under review due to other circumstances. The provision of personnel and financial resources to the UN Trust Fund is critical, and therefore we continue to advocate for same. And we note now that the MSS is now under UN Security Council Resolution 2751 for persons who are interested in following those things. It was 2699 before, it's now 2751. And again, we use this platform for even members of the diplomatic corps who may be following this online, for them to advocate to their capitals to provide support to the UN Country Trust Fund, both on the MSS mission side as well as the humanitarian basket fund, which remains underfunded. Both are required to really have this mission be successful, and for Haiti's longer-term, medium and long-term developmental plans to be able to take root. I just wish to assure that I am on all matters in touch with my counterpart, Dominique Dupuis, who is the Haitian foreign minister under the cabinet established in this new regime. And Prime Minister Holness also met with Prime Minister Conille on the margins of the UN High-Level Week General Assembly as well. So our engagement continues through CARICOM and bilaterally as well. So I thank you for your patience and attention on this somewhat lengthy presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Minister. Thank you very much, Minister. And you see why I said that she is such a phenomenal minister. I had someone, a diplomat from a Latin American country, say to me, "Did you see your minister's speech at the UN? It was absolutely phenomenal," and I haven't. But I need to see it, because if they're globally speaking about how wonderful that was, I do need to see it. And I would encourage everyone to find it online to see that speech. But the Ministry of Foreign Affairs really worked very hard on the India mission, and you got an update on Haiti, Minister. I think I will stop and take questions. I know there were 2 other MOUs that Minister had mentioned in relation to digital transformation, and one of them had to do with just a general cooperation on digital public infrastructure, which India is like first in the world in, and even other countries, including the developed ones that we always look at. They are looking at what India has been able to do in that respect. And so we have a cooperation agreement where we can learn a lot more from them, and they will lend us support in relation to us building out our own digital public infrastructure. We also have a MOU in relation to the universal payments infrastructure. And that is a very big deal. Many countries, even European countries, are adopting that payment system now because of how wonderful it is in terms of it being agnostic of payment type. It can take many different payment types. And so I know next week I'm supposed to also speak on AI, and the head of the AI task force will be here, and I guess telling you because I know you're going to ask me later about that update. They're going to be here next week, and one of the areas of cooperation too is in relation to having an AI lab in Jamaica. They have AI labs in India that are doing really, really phenomenal work, not just in universities, but even in secondary schools, because they understand that AI is the future, and equipping our young people with the tools to be a part of that future is critical. And we too believe that, and so a key part of the conversation was around us developing an AI lab in Jamaica. And so next week, since we're doing AI, I will discuss all of that in next week's post-cap. So you have to come back for next week so that we can continue the conversation. So I'm going to open it up now, Naomi, to you with the questions. Minister,
Good morning,
if you may join
ministers.
me here.
Yes, indeed, Minister Johnson-Smith, right. Good morning, everyone. Ministers, permanent secretaries, and other dignitaries. I see the Commissioner here as well as Head of MOCA. Good morning, everybody. Yes, and a lot of good work happening. I see Arthur Hall first, and I think Shoshana will be second, and then I go over to Jamelia.
Good morning, Ministers.
Good morning.
Minister Johnson-Smith, can you explain to us why an historic trip as the Prime Minister going to India, the nation found out about it when he was in India via social media? And Minister, Information, can you tell us if this is how you're going to operate the information portfolio going forward?
Well, I actually expect both of those questions are to the Minister of Information.
Yeah, I think they are. I think they're both to
including
me. In terms of the PM's trip to India, this was very actually coordinated in a very short period of time. And we would have sent out notifications in relation to travel. We usually do. That is done through the Office of the Prime Minister. And Naomi is here. Naomi is our press secretary, and she usually sends out our press notifications. And so if that was an issue in terms of timing, that is obviously an apology. That is necessary there. But it is a trip that was very much known in, especially in the public sector. We were working for several weeks across all of the ministries to look at where MOUs would have been necessary, working with our Attorney General's department to ensure that the MOUs were reviewed. And so it is, as you said, it is important that prior to any engagement like this, that it is we make notifications, and that is very clearly noted. Also, I should note that JIS was with the Prime Minister. The JIS would have gone and would have taken all of the footage and submitted it back to Jamaica for the use of any media that would have needed it.
Thank you, Minister. And it is regrettable. In fact, recall, Minister, the PM was also at the UN just a few days prior, so it was a very, very hectic period and schedule as well. So, Shauna, you wanted to yield to Jamelia? All right, let me get around to Jamelia as we just have another question, and then we will go to CERT. All right.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jamila Maitland from TVJ News. My question is to Minister Smith. I think it was a couple of months ago at post-cabinet press briefing I had asked if there were any Jamaicans in Haitian custody. Given that we have soldiers on the ground now, if the commissioner could also chime in to find out if we have any Jamaicans in Haitian custody, and whether or not, if the Jamaicans are there, would it trigger a system to alert us here locally?
Right. Thank you very much for that, Jamila, for raising that issue again. Thus far, we have had no confirmed reports of any Jamaicans in prison at this time. We can continue to follow up. I know I had shared with you previously that some of the, I would say, institutional weaknesses and some of the maybe deficiencies, institutional challenges which are being experienced on the other side perhaps could have led to informational deficiencies. So we have not stopped inquiring, but we can inquire again. I can ask for another follow-up to see whether there has been any change. We know that there has been informal movement between people. Remember, we had that prison break that took place, and we know that they have ended up in various places, and that they may have stories about persons who they may have left behind, and those persons may have also left. And it's very difficult in such circumstances to give concrete answers, because the circumstances are not, they are not certain. They're not, information is not always the most concrete. So we continue to make inquiries. So thank you for raising it again.
Just a quick follow-up then, Jamila.
To the Commissioner, if you could just confirm, there was a report in April of this year of two Jamaicans who were arrested in Haiti. One of them was wanted by the St. James Police. I think his alias was Brookhand. If you could just confirm that where the status of that person now, and whether or not extradition was in play to get that person here. What is the process? Thanks.
Commissioner? The Commissioner has said he's not aware of that case, but he will check and we'll get you a response if he does find the information.
We'll inquire as well on our side. Right. If you can share the full name in addition to the alias, that would be helpful. Thank you.
All right, no further questions
no other
at this
questions?
time.
Well, thank you, Minister. And for all of you who are here for the cyber element, it's good to have you here and to have you sit and see what happens at a post-cabinet press briefing. We do these every Wednesday after a cabinet meeting, so that the media can ask us anything. Any question they have, we're here to answer it. And so this morning I do want to invite Lieutenant Colonel Godfrey Sterling, the head of our Jamaica Cyber Incident Response Unit, to speak about cybersecurity generally, and also Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Now, this is an absolutely important area for the government of Jamaica, and we are putting more resources behind it. There are several players in the area. You saw MOCA here, you had other teams from BOJ and elsewhere, and also JCF has pretty good people in this area too. So we have a lot of individuals who have been highly trained in the area. We're getting more resources because we understand that cyber threats are really, really important threats that we have to be very mindful of and have policies in place that can mitigate against the quite damaging effects of a cyber attack. And so I want to welcome Lieutenant Sterling, Colonel Sterling, to speak to you and to launch Cyber Awareness Month this morning. Please welcome.
Thank you, Minister. I will adopt, in the interest of time, the protocols that have been established for the postcab, and to thank you all for turning up this morning. In speaking about cybersecurity generally, I want to convey the culmination of a year of varied successes across the spectrum of cyber that we treat with. If I start with the Global Cybersecurity Index, Jamaica performed creditably. It's a quadrennial publication that measures the performance of a country through its cyber legislation, through its cooperation, through the growth and development of technical capabilities, as well as its ability to provide cybersecurity services to its population writ large. And in all 5 years that Jamaica was assessed, we did well. In some areas, we had triple-digit increases in the 4 years from 2020 to 2024. And that really is demonstrated by a 78% reduction in attempted attacks against cyber infrastructure in Jamaica. This saw the number of attempted attacks in the first half of 2024 decreasing from just over 19 million last year in the same period of time to just over 4 million this year. We would have ended 2023 with just over 43 million attempted attacks. This year, we're hoping to end under 10 million attacks if the trend continues. This is supported and borne on the back of a 62% reduction in the number of vulnerable IP addresses that we're monitoring on a daily basis. And on a daily basis, we monitor all IPv4 IP addresses for the .jm space, which is just over 7 million IP addresses. We have on a daily basis just over 3.05 million connections from just over 900,000 devices related to just over 600,000 accounts. Now, when we look at that, it says that each person has at least one device, some people more than one devices, and many of these devices are mobile devices. And so we have been able, based on those metrics, to craft our messaging throughout the year to target the more vulnerable in our societies, the elderly, the young, and to this end, we have created a social media brochure guideline for K-12 and for teenagers, which, while we've done it on our own, we're hoping to have a collaboration with the Ministry of Education to introduce it into the curriculum, because it really provides that sort of engaging but simple language in how to behave responsibly in cyberspace. That, when we look at it, really comes down to how we've been able to engage the other stakeholders in cyber in Jamaica and to bring a more holistic and persistent picture of our national cybersecurity threat landscape. What that allows us to do is not to depend on being lumped into Latin America or North America and the Caribbean, but to create metrics for Jamaica that allows for the scarce benefits that we have to be more clinically apportioned to the challenges we face. October is recognized globally as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And while we do maintain a posture of public education and awareness year-long, October allows us to focus and amplify that messaging to all our stakeholders. This year, the global theme has not changed for the last 3 years because the basic challenges that cyber face globally have not really changed. And at the heart of that is really a very low level of cyber hygiene and a high level of cyber delinquency. So in keeping with the global theme, our national theme this year is building resilience, securing our nation. And we really need to build resilience because we have to create what we would call in military jargon defense in depth. So if we start at our internet exchange point or with our service providers and work to the individual using the internet and or critical systems, there needs to be layers of defense between the external perpetrator of a malicious act or the inadvertent actions of insiders and the systems that they're trying to impact. If we do that on an individual basis and bring that into the culture of any entity within which we work, including in our homes and our social groups, then what we will find is that it becomes a culture. It shifts the culture of security from one of nonchalance or ignorance to one of a predominantly everyday method of utilizing internet resources. And if we can do that consistently, we will secure our nation. what we're going to have this year is a month of activities that will be focused more on key thematic areas for each week, and we've broken it down so that the general population can participate. And what we're trying to achieve here is to not just raise awareness, but to practically demonstrate how you can build your own cyber resilience from the very device that you use to the organization within which you work. In continuing the work of the National Security Operations Center, and just a bit of an explanation, when the pandemic struck in 2020, what Jamaica had was an incident response capability, which meant we sat and we reacted to incidents. What we were forced to do, because of the number of entities that were going online to deliver services that were critical to the day-to-day living of Jamaicans, was to create a security operations center where we were able to pull the different sources from feeds and sensors into one area, do the analysis, and then provide vulnerability and breach notification to entities that were affected. That allowed us to get a more holistic and persistent picture of our situation within cyberspace, and that allowed us to focus resources. The NSOC continues its operation, and together with the JCERT, what we're seeking to do is to raise that level of awareness through the focused and amplified activities of October, so that persons appreciate that Jamaica is not just sitting down and allowing cyber issues to go untreated, but we're bringing all the parties in the ecosystem to a single point of focus, which is the defense of our national ecosystem. We would have started yesterday with the first in our lecture series, and each week we will have 3 days of activities. On a Tuesday, we will have a lecture where we'll invite stakeholders in the ecosystem to present on particular topics. And the full list is available on our website as well as our social platforms. On today, we're having the launch, and what this is a departure from what we usually have, where we would have all the stakeholders come and present on their areas of the ecosystem. Today, we're simply sensitizing you to what will happen for the month, and I'll get back to how we will get the stakeholders involved towards the end of the month. Ransomware continues to be an existential dilemma for nations, and Jamaica is no different. In a recent symposium, it was said that Jamaica as a developing state has to face real-world challenges that developed states face with much less of a budget and resources that they have to bring to bear on these challenges. The cyber criminals do not look at Jamaica as a developing country. They look at the targets that are there. And given that the Caribbean as a region is target-rich and very much behind the 8 ball in terms of how the development of cybersecurity has progressed, they have pivoted from North America and the European area because of the crackdown by the US and its Five Allies in terms of some of the major players. What that means is that the attacks are going to become more voluminous, more sophisticated, and we're going to see longer dwell times in our networks with a greater level of obfuscation for the challenges that we're seeing. So for week one, we're looking at whether or not we continue to secure our services on our premises or using the cloud. Now, when we think about the cloud, it seems like a very easy solution to all our challenges. But the cloud is just somebody's computer somewhere else. And when we talk about government, we have to think about jurisdiction and the sensitivity of the data that our ministries, departments, and agencies treat with, and whether or not we want to put that in another country. This is because different countries have different rules that govern the provision of cloud services. And for some countries, irrespective of where you are, once you sign up for the service, the government has the ability to request the production of your data for whatever purposes, particularly in criminal investigation. Additionally, given the multi-jurisdictional nature and cross-border phenomenon of cybercrimes, we have to be careful where we put things like criminal evidence for certain cases and where we keep it. So the cloud isn't always the best solution, even though it might be the cheaper solution. For governments, we really have to look inwards in how we provide that service. And certainly GovCloud is one such solution that could be pursued to deliver on this. In week 2, we're looking at protecting the digital asset. and we're looking at this in three bubbles: the individual, the body corporate, and government as a facilitator. And what this seeks to do is to allow for persons to appreciate that government will create that enabling environment. The body corporate needs to act within the requirements of the Data Protection Act and cybersecurity best practices to secure your data, but as individuals, you have a responsibility for your own personal cybersecurity. In week 3, we're thinking about the younger generation. We have our career symposium in this week, but we're looking at minimizing that digital footprint. Do we need to share everything that we share? Do we need to have so many accounts all across the social media landscape? And for companies, do you really need to collect all the data you are collecting in order to achieve your business goals? And so we're looking at it from a holistic standpoint. And to this end, we will have a transformation of the back lawns of Jamaica House on the 23rd, where we will bring schools in, totaling about 250, 300 students, and the universities, as well as the corporate entities that have cybersecurity remits, so that persons can appreciate that when we build cyber skills here, we do not have to export it for persons to be gainfully employed. And that, in terms of providing options for career pathways, is going to be the signature for week 3. For week 4, we're looking to culminate the activities of the month, and here we're seeking to bring into the national exercise the notion of a national catastrophe, where it starts with a very simple, probably innocuous compromise, but grows as the lateral traversal of networks take place to the compromise of critical systems and the complete shutdown of the government. It is not science fiction. Costa Rica, more than a year ago, Bermuda, less than a year ago, would have suffered a similar fate within this region. And what it will do is simulate the total cutoff of government services that are digitally delivered and how we respond to that, utilizing all the agencies and the layers that we have, including our managed security service providers, which are the companies that offer cybersecurity services in Jamaica. On the 31st, we're going to have essentially an open day. We'll have an opening ceremony with stakeholders invited, and they will make remarks. This will be held at the Caribbean Military Academy facility in Upper Camp, and it will again see us having a day of activities. Following the opening ceremony, we will have a cyber village, which will feature an immersive display and demonstration of what Jamaica's cyber landscape looks like. There will be some closed sessions, particularly for ministries, departments, and agencies, where we will have basically a come to Jesus moment with the heads of entities so that they can see where their entities stand when we look at vulnerabilities, the mitigation of those vulnerabilities, breaches, the remediation of those breaches, and the building back stronger after these events occur. Additionally, the Jamaica Defense Force, as one of our premier partners, will be hosting their hackathon. And it will be in one compound. You can traverse the cyber village, you can view the hackathon, or if you have coding skills, you can participate. MOCA is the defending champions, and we will see whether or not they will be unseated. We hope to be able to present this year the Director's Shield for the National Cybersecurity Exercise, and when the day is done, we hope that October would be something that has caused persons not just to remember what we've done, but to take stock of how you utilize technology, how you operate within cyberspace, what your cyber hygiene looks like, whether you're a cyber delinquent, and how you can actually improve on those skills. We hope for the symposium not just to have the universities, because in partner with how we're thinking about technology, we're bringing it to the lower educational levels, the primary schools, the high schools. We have to be disruptive if we're going to bridge that skills gap. We cannot focus on the formal 4-year or 2-year degrees, but we have to ensure that persons who have the aptitude, skill, and interest can be facilitated to do this. So we're taking the youngsters, we're taking the teenagers, and we're bringing them into the fold as early as we can so that we can get it done. ladies and gentlemen, that is what Cybersecurity Awareness Month is about. If there are any questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, I thank you for your time and attention.
Very much, Lieutenant Colonel. There are many really good people in the public sector. And I know for members of the media, you may not have known all of this that was happening in Jamaica. There is a lot of work being done. MOCA has experts in this field. JCF has experts in this field. JDF has experts. We have the CERT coordinating. There's a lot of work happening behind the scenes, and you just got a little piece of what is happening behind the scenes. And Lieutenant Colonel, I have to say congratulations to you and to the rest of the team for all that you're doing. And for those who are watching online, I know some parents do watch throughout the day, as you tell me, there are millions of cyber jobs that are vacant globally. It is an area that we should encourage our children to pursue. And so if your child is asking you, Mommy, Daddy, what should I do? Cyber is actually a very good area, and we have good expertise here. So opening up for questions now from the media.
Thank you so much, Minister. We do have a question here. May I congratulate the JCERT team. They really have been doing a fantastic job in ensuring, too, that we highlight the vulnerability and resilience, really, that we're building in our cyber and digital spaces. So thank you so much. We start off with Jamila this time.
Morning again, Jamila from TVJ. I've read that companies don't necessarily like to report instances of cyber threats. We've seen a lot in the financial spaces, and that's because the customers really call us a lot. What is the willingness of companies to participate in the project that you have ongoing now? And if the police can just speak on enforcement of cyber threats.
Thank you for the question, Jamila. So when we think about cyber threats and companies, we have to bear in mind that, particularly in our local scenario, there is that fear of being seen as a victim. Additionally, there's the bottom line. There's a fear that there will be financial fallout if persons know that they've suffered a breach or if they have significant vulnerabilities. The converse usually is true, that if you're more transparent, you build trust with your clientele. And so it's really trying to find a balance. Now, for the bigger companies, some of them believe that the cost of recovery is greater than the cost of implementing cybersecurity. But that is a myth that must be dispelled. And through our public education and awareness campaigns, we're seeing a shift in that. We're seeing more companies coming to us to say, look, we have this vulnerability or we've suffered this breach. Granted, for some of them, it is triggered by the clause in their cybersecurity insurance that says you must report it. But even so, it is a change in the culture, and the thought and the activities are leading to a greater awareness within our space, and more companies are coming forward. So it's a good direction in which we're going.
Thank you, Colonel.
Police, I think you wanted them to discuss enforcement of the existing legislation. Anyone or no? Anyone from JCF?
So.
Okay, all right.
Colonel did a pretty good. Yeah.
All right, we'll have them speak to you
after. If I
after.
just say 2 words on the enforcement. The first part of enforcement is that there needs to be a crime. If you don't report the crime, it can't be investigated, and there can be no prosecution. Where the crimes are reported, there is the activity, particularly if it's reported to the CERT, or triage process will determine that a cybercrime has been committed based on our Cybercrimes Act. It is then handed over to the JCF or MOCA, and the investigations take place. We've had successful prosecutions. We've had prosecutions where, or investigations where at a certain point the victims say, look, I no longer want to pursue this. And that just kills the investigation dead. Additionally, you would have seen recently this situation with the NWC and MOCA and our partnership with the Nigerians, where we were able to follow that investigation to a successful conclusion in Lagos, not here in Jamaica. And this is based on how cybersecurity globally is a team sport, and cross-border we're able to work. I mean, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is here. Those multilateral treaties actually allow for a lot of this to happen. So we are seeing improvement.
Thank you so much, Colonel. We have one of our students here, and she'll ask a question too.
Good morning. I am Renee Robinson, a student at the University of the West Indies, pursuing a Master of Science in International Development and Public Management. So before I ask my question, I want to thank the Minister for opening the post-cabinet briefing for a student like myself to come and take part. So my question is, as a student pursuing a Master of Science in International Development and Public Management, how can technology be used to solve some of our most challenging policy challenges?
Wow.
Sounds like it's help with an essay or a research paper, right?
What I will say is we are opening up PostCab to anyone, and we've gone on the road, and we're going to continue to go on the road, and we're happy when our students come and they ask questions, and they usually ask very probing questions. And I will start, and then I know, Lieutenant Colonel, you're going to want to answer too, but technology is absolutely critical in terms of solving our issues. And you know, this morning we had the Minister of Foreign Affairs speaking about India and the India mission and how they've used technology to address a lot of their issues. So I can give you an example. One was in relation to persons not being able to be identified. You're not sure who this person is that is coming before you to open a bank account. And they use technology. They use their digital ID, much like what we're going to do with NIDS, to actually, and made it not compulsory, so people could opt in or opt out. And they were able to get 1.3 billion people to sign up for a digital ID. And what that did was that it made acquisition costs for businesses lower. It also made it easier for people to open an account. And so you had 500 million people who didn't have accounts before who now were able to because of that technology. We can use technology a lot more, even in our hackathons. A lot of people don't know some of the phenomenal work happening in our universities. I got to go to an AI hackathon at UE last year. And at that hackathon, the students were using AI to solve government issues. And they were phenomenal, and they even had one team from high school. They felt they were good enough to go and compete against the UE students who were there. And they were solving issues. They were looking at crime. They were looking at how to better deliver social services using technology. And we deeply believe that if we're going to solve a lot of the social problems in Jamaica and just general problems we have in government, technology is a useful tool. And you have JISTV here. I have digital transformation. It's all about getting things online and getting things digitized. But JISTV is a part of that team because we also have to understand the environment within which we are operating and be able to deal with those vulnerabilities. So technology is critical. And we're going to need you, and I need you in your studies to be telling me and the government how we should be better using technology to solve the problems that you face.
Thank you, Minister. And there really isn't much to add there except to say that technology is a double-edged sword. In the right hands, it is a great enabler. It allows for those year-on, age-old problems to be easily solved. I just heard this morning the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, where the persons who won it were able to crack the code for predicting the 3D imaging of all protein molecules. And for decades, that was considered impossible. Mm-hmm. So what students like you need to do for us is to see these problems that we've grappled with for years, for decades, for centuries, and find innovative ways to leverage the emerging technologies as they get cheaper and more affordable for you to solve them for us and for the generations to come.
Thank you. Sashona, you're now ready with your question. All right.
Good morning, Sashona Small from the Gleno. I do have a few questions. First for the Colonel. We have had a reduction rather in the number of cyber attacks in Jamaica. But speaking to experts, they have explained to me that that's necessarily a good thing, right? Because what that possibly means is that the cyber criminals are becoming more targeted in their approach, attacking utilities and agencies and so forth. So are we seeing where the number of attacks on, Jamaica's utilities, are we seeing an increase in that? And how are we building our resilience against those attacks?
Thank you for the question. So if the reduction in the number of attacks happened in a silo and the number of vulnerabilities as well as the attitude within the ecosystem were not trending in the same direction, then I would agree with some of the experts you're speaking with. But when we take all the metrics together, what we're seeing is a trend in the right direction. Now, true, the attacks have become more sophisticated and more targeted, but they're fewer in number. And what it means is that we have more resources to apply, one, to the recovery effort, two, to ensure that the lessons learned are properly shared and implemented in building back. And that also should help to keep the numbers trending down. What you find, particularly in Jamaica, is that even though we may be a soft target, there is enough expertise being used, even though some persons do it quietly, in order to protect their digital assets. And as we move from a stage of ignorance of our digital assets to understanding what those are, we're better able to defend against them. And so, yes, it's not necessarily good, but based on all the metrics that we've considered, we're confident that it's trending in the right direction.
Well, I have a few questions for Senator Morris.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, did you explain how we are building resilience in Jamaica's public sector? I didn't get that.
So, within the public sector, we're building resilience by targeting those persons who are currently operating within the ICT infrastructure in terms of doing security tasks. We're ensuring that they are properly trained, that they can deliver the skill sets at the point in the organization that it's required, and that the desired outcomes are what we want. We're putting in place frameworks, standards, and policies that will ensure that the security of government ICT is standard across the board. What that will mean is that we're able to manage the levels of vulnerability, and we're able to respond to breaches in a more holistic way. As far as the equipment themselves, the eGov Jamaica works primarily with the procurement, installation, and management of those, and their policies and framework ensure that there is greater emphasis placed on fit-for-purpose procurement, as well as the use of these equipment. At the cybersecurity level, we have different agencies. The CERT has cybersecurity, there's cyber defense, led primarily by the military, and law enforcement by MOCA and the JCF that are here. But more so, we have a burgeoning managed security service provision section, where companies like Fortinet and local companies like T-Tech have been able to get into the space and to effect cybersecurity as a service at reasonable prices, one could say, to some companies who are less likely to approach the JCERT or law enforcement for their cybersecurity. So when you look at Jamaica as a whole, the public education and awareness is paying off in that companies are recognizing that it is cheaper to implement cybersecurity measures than to recover from a breach. And what that means is that if the companies are secure and the ministries, departments, and agencies get more secure with time, the resilience is built in such that when the eventuality happens, we will recover faster, we'll recover stronger, and the impact will be minimized based on it.
All right, thank you. Let's take two more. I know that we are well into 10 o'clock, so we have another student. And then I think Arthur, you wanted to ask a question? All right, wonderful.
Sure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Malik Harrison. I'm a second-year student at the University of the West Indies, Mona. So to concur what Renee was saying, it is truly a pleasure to be here. Now, my question goes out to Minister Johnson Smith. And I'm asking, could you briefly share an overview of some of the engagement that took place at the United Nations a few weeks ago?
All right, I'll let her come.
I'm actually working on a statement for Senate for Friday because it's very extensive. But I can just give you essentially that we had, we've entered into new diplomatic relations with Tunisia. So there was a meeting with their foreign minister and the signing of formal arrangements. Tunisia is the most diversified economy in Africa, and it's part of our foreign policy of engaging with non-traditional partners to seek to expand our economic and trade opportunities, as well as, of course, our tourism engagements. We had several bilateral engagements. Of course, I supported the Prime Minister when he was there, and then the delegation beyond that. But we participated primarily at the start in the Summit of the Future. Summit of the Future is a groundbreaking and re-energizing way for the world to now start looking beyond where we are and to recommit to not only attaining the Sustainable Development Goals for Agenda 2030, but thinking about how we make policies for today's generations and for future generations, including, as they say in the international language, those unborn. And Jamaica was honored to facilitate, together with the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Declaration on Future Generations, which came under the Pact of the Future, negotiated by Namibia and Germany. So this was actually a very major role that we played on the international stage. The document did get consensus, and they were passed, and now are the sort of guiding elements for the next stage of multilateral engagement around sustainable development. We spoke at on the sea rise issues. I attended the G20 foreign ministers meeting. We had the CARICOM Council of Foreign Ministers, which also met and engaged in several different aspects. And things which I'm not remembering right now because it was a very hectic week. But if you tune into the Senate on Friday, you'll get a full detailed enumeration of the events. All right, thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
And just a plug, Senate is at 10 a.m. on Friday.
And to Minister, maybe we can do a 5 good things from ministry.
Yes, is having a small hyperventilation moment because I did not mention that I also presented the national policy statement of Jamaica.
Absolutely. That deserves a round of applause. Yeah.
But that in itself is a work. So I look forward to engaging with you on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. Really appreciate it. All right, so I know time is well spent. We can take 2 more, Minister. And so I'll give it to Arthur, and then I think Sashana had, we had another one. Let's see how we can work it out, but really 2 more, because I do know that there are so many people who need to get back to regular work as well.
Yes.
Minister, in recent times there have been attacks from the political circles on members of the media and media houses. Are you concerned that this will affect our ranking in the press freedom ranking? And you've been deadly silent despite people calling media houses politically aligned and naming journalists as being linked to parties. Why no comment from you, Minister?
No, well, you haven't asked me. So here I am now. You asked me. The reality is that this administration is very much committed to press freedom. And I think everything we have done has demonstrated that. And I think even just our commitment to even these Wednesday morning meetings is very much indicative of that. We come here every Wednesday, invite the media, we bring ministers out, we take every question, whether they're hard or easy, we take them. We don't run away from the media, and we believe that the media is absolutely important to democracy. Very, very important. And so we support the media. And when we talked, I know you spoke about attacks on the media. That is never, ever acceptable at all. Never acceptable to attack the media. The media is very important, and they play a very important role in our society. And I have to say that over and over again, and I've said that here at Post Cabinet many times. In terms of what we see on social media, that's an issue. And our Prime Minister has been on the record saying that we have to look at social media and look at what is said and what is posted. And we've seen it exacerbated with AI. And Lieutenant Colonel noted that, technology is a double-edged sword. It's beautiful when used for good, but it can also be used for very negative things. And I think that conversation that our Prime Minister tried to start about the social media and what we say on social media and having accountability about what was said is something that we really do have to look at. And so it is in relation to the media, but it's in relation to many other areas. We have our children being bullied on social media, and it is something that we have to address. We have many other instances on social media where things are said of people that are untrue, and we have to really, as a country, decide what kind of country do we want? What country do we want? And so I, again, reiterate the importance of the media, the importance that we do not attack the media as they do their very legitimate work. And there are many people in the media. They're wonderful people. I see them here coming through Postcab. I get them WhatsApping me and calling me all the time. They're doing their job. Even if it's a hard question, they're doing their job. And so this administration is very, very, very sure that we support the media, and we will continue to support the media, because we believe that a country that's truly committed to democracy is one that supports the media and does not put up with anything that undermines the role of the media.
Thank you, Minister. Well said, and that is the policy position of the government. All right, Sashana, your time.
Good morning again, Minister.
Sure.
The Prime Minister, in his personal filing in court against the Integrity Commission, has argued that provisions of the IC Act should be struck down for allegedly lacking independence, fairness, and impartiality. What is the government's position on these provisions of the IC Act? And what is the government's position on the constitutionality, of Section 14(5) of the Corruption Prevention Act, that requires public servants to explain where their assets are disproportionate to their lawful earnings?
All right, so I love that question, or the two questions that you gave. And again, I remind you, we're at post-cabinet press briefing, where I tend to talk about what happened in cabinet. We didn't have a conversation in relation to IC. We have not had that. But what I will note is that there is a joint select committee that is established and that is reviewing the law. And that has persons from the government. It also has individuals from the opposition. And that joint select committee is meeting, and it is through that meeting that we are going to be able to get the recommendations in relation to changes. Many persons have sat before that joint select and given their opinions. In many instances, they are diverging opinions, and that's why we have a joint select committee. We have a joint select committee so that whenever we have legislation that is important to the people of Jamaica, we open it up for people to come and say, this is what my view is, this is how I think it should be amended. And so I would like us to let that process play out. And in terms of the government, we believe that that is the right process through which we should review that legislation, and we will get some recommendations coming from it. And when those recommendations come, we can speak through what has been recommended by that joint select committee. But right now, there is no articulated position of the government outside of, we have a joint select committee that is reviewing the legislation, and we are hearing the views of the public in relation to it.
Thank you so much, Minister. Because I'm very partial to the students, let us then take our final question from the student who's been specially invited too. All right.
Yeah, they're all going to become media practitioners. You know, I think this is a nice place for us to recruit persons into the media. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Shea Smith, a first-year law student at the University of the West Indies. My question is actually directed to Mr. Sterling. Being that we have such an engaged percentage of young women on social media, what are the best cybersecurity practices to ensure that they protect themselves?
Thank you for the question. So, technology is really gender neutral. And when we think about our young men and women, and in the case of your question, our young women, the place to start is, what image do you want to leave out there? Whatever you put on the internet stays there forever. It doesn't get deleted, it doesn't disappear. And so as a 13-year-old, what you put online will dog your progress as a 20-year-old seeking a job. It therefore means you have to decide what comes into your space. You can curate your feed. You can ensure that what pops up on your timeline is what you want to see. Secondly, you have to be you as an individual. Not because your peers or the people you don't like or the people you revere behave a particular way means it's good for you. And so you've got to decide, what image of me am I going to put online? Do I really need to put anything out there? Do I really need to be spending so much screen time with TikTok, Discord, or a role-playing game, as opposed to using technology to better myself or to discover something? And so for the young ladies, if you don't have to share it, don't share it. Understand, if you put it out there, it will not disappear. And thirdly, what image do you want to be remembered by from your social media or your online presence? Once you take those things into consideration and you ensure that your device is protected, your data is protected, you protect that PII, HI, and FI. The personally identifiable information, your health identifiable information, your financial identifiable information, you protect those, then it allows you to traverse cyberspace as you in a way that benefits you and allow you to leverage technology for good, as opposed to becoming a victim of a lot of the things you see online.
Very good. Thank you for that advice, and I think that goes for adults too. It's not just for young women. All right, well, so thank you.
Yes, Minister.
Is there any?
We
that's
can close.
It?
That's it.
Oh, wonderful. All right, so at 10:26 a.m., we are going to close this week's post-cabinet press briefing. I know it's been a very good one, and I have to thank Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith, the best Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade we've ever had, for being our guest today. And I especially want to thank Colonel Jassart, and that presentation was just phenomenal. You've given us a lot of information. It's good for the media to hear, because sometimes when we do these launches, we don't necessarily get the media there, but it's good for you to be here. The last thing I will say is in relation to the government, and a reminder, a moratorium that we have. Micro, small, and medium enterprises and registered charitable organizations are being encouraged to take advantage of the waivers available through the NHT Employer Arrears Amnesty Program, which is open to qualified entities until March 2025. And if you are an MSME with up to 50 employees and an annual income of no more than 425 million, that's a lot of little businesses, as well as charitable organizations registered with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, you are eligible for this concession. And if you submit all of your annual and monthly returns, remit your outstanding employee contributions, and pay 80% of the outstanding employer contributions, you can benefit from the cancellation of interest and penalties related to these arrears. So I encourage small businesses who are in arrears to take advantage of these concessions that the government has provided for you. And on that note, I thank you again for being here for another post-cabinet press briefing, and we will see you next week at 9 a.m. to do this all over again. Thank you, and God bless you.